Hey, everybody. Good to see you this wonderful Saturday. I'm here with Adam Schroll. So just quick background. Adam went from being in a primarily number crunching job at Walmart, and he's gone through every step of the external journey that you can. He's gotten a new job. He's created a freelance income. He now owns his own business. Some of those things, were dream bridges. Some of those things were temporary, but he's now doing something that he loves as a business owner in California. And so I want to go through the whole story with you guys so you can see the different steps of his journey, get the lessons to take out of it, and ultimately start your own journey doing the same kind of thing for something that you really love. So Adam, let's kick it off. Let's get started, man. So let's go back to the beginning. So way back before you ever met me, before you ever heard of me, when you were trying to figure out what you were going to do with your career, take us back to that moment. Take us through what was going through your head.
Well, so there's been a lot of ups and downs. I had initially, ever since I got into the corporate world, I'd been wanting to get out, basically. But so it was a long time coming. But I remember there was one night in particular, I was at the last job that kind of initiated me venturing into this kind of your work. I had a particularly rough day, and at the end of the day, we had a call scheduled, and so spoke with you, and basically at the time I was putting a lot of hours, and it wasn't aligning with who I was, and I knew that, and I tried a lot of different options to.
Yeah, I recall you had a lot of stuff on your resume when we first did the inventory. How many jobs had you had between when you graduated and when you and me first talked?
Yeah, probably 7.
Seven. Wow.
Yeah.
7 or 8. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So you were hopping from job to job trying to find something that works, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I shifted industries. I started in the investment business, had a couple jobs there, 3 jobs actually. Then I was a recruiter briefly. Then I moved over to the retail world. Actually, I had more jobs than 7. It was like 8 or 9. It was a lot. And so, yeah, I moved around. I shifted industries. I shifted jobs within those industries. And nothing ever really truly resonated. I got closer to things I enjoyed, but it wasn't me. And so I feel like I needed to actually do something more proactively to make a shift. And that's where I came across one of your ads.
Yeah. Well, so before we talk about like the whole discovery and all that kind of stuff, what was your rock bottom moment when you made the decision something's got to change?
Yeah, I don't know if it was my true rock bottom, like career wise, but because it goes in waves. But I just had some downtime, and I was traveling. I'd just taken a trip, and I was on my way back to work the next day. It was a Sunday, I remember, and not to get into after I saw your ad, but it really resonated with me because I didn't want to go into work on Mondays, or I just had this kind of, people call it the Sunday scaries, where you just thinking about the next week.
Heard that.
Yeah, the Sunday scaries. So it's just kind of this anxiousness that it's like, oh, okay, here comes another week, and I knew that this was not how I wanted to live my life. And that it shouldn't. I knew there were other options, and I wasn't pursuing them. And I didn't know how to get out of kind of corporate America and shift into whatever resonated more, because I've taken all the personality tests. I was big into self-discovery, but I just couldn't figure it out. And so I guess my rock bottom was just, or kind of that, it was more of it had just built up so much over time that it wasn't a specific moment. It was just like so much weight from the years. Like just, I needed to make a change. And I'm glad I came across, we crossed paths. So
yeah. You talk about you did a bunch of personality tests, and this is something I get a lot. Is people like, oh, I've tried like 10 different personality tests, and the Myers-Briggs, and the this and the that, and all this kind of stuff. But what I found is that like if you don't make a decision and B work with somebody personally, a lot of those personality tests, they kind of give you like hints and stuff, but they don't really solve the problem,
Right.
And it sounds like that was your experience as well.
Yeah, I like the Myers-Briggs type, like the, I guess, personality test.
Mm-hmm.
But when it tells me I should be a librarian based on my skill set, I don't find using my MBA toward that is going to be very beneficial for me. And really, that being said, I worked in a library in grad school, but it just, or like be a psychologist. I'd love to go back and be a psychologist, but I don't want to put the time in and the money. It's just not going to pay out. So those are,
yeah.
Each with their purpose. And I think that the Myers-Briggs type, maybe it works for some, but you had me take the disc. That was really useful. And then you interpreted it. So I think there are various tests that can be used in different ways. That's just one that, I think is more common that doesn't necessarily serve the career. It doesn't help you on a career path quite as much, unless maybe you take it at a younger age, and then you can kind of utilize it differently, but you're going to have your own take on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I would say is that generally those tests, they're great at telling you about yourself, and people love to hear about themselves, but it doesn't necessarily connect to like actionable advice. Right. I mean, like even in your case, if they said, oh, you should be a librarian, you might say, well, I'm more ambitious. I want to make, 6 figures a year. It's hard to do that as a librarian.
Nothing against being a librarian, but yeah, it just, it wasn't something I had considered, and I'm not going to, but teach their own.
And that's this thing is, again, nothing, I completely agree with you, nothing against being a librarian, right? And if somebody, is comfortable with that level of income, great. I would totally encourage it, whatever makes you happy. As you happen to be a very ambitious guy. I know this. So,
it just didn't align with,
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't helpful moving me to my next step is all.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, like if you look at your life, right, you've got a beautiful wife, you're in great shape, you've got a lot going for you. And it was like this career thing was like the one thing that was really eating at you, if I'm correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think you spend so much time of your life in your career working that it's a shame not to at least enjoy it to some extent, where it's not going to, because when you don't like your work, it spreads across your whole life, and it impacts your relationships, and it impacts your friendships. And at least for me, some people can turn it off, but for me, it carries over. So, I think it's just really important to get that career down and get it to as closely aligned to your purpose as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. So, okay. So you were a partnerships manager was your official title. A lot of people are going to think that's a sales role. I recall though, it was more data oriented. You were doing a lot of,
there's a lot of data involved. I think maybe a better way to put it, I was like a category manager. So it'd be like a little bit more like a merchant, sort of like a buyer, not quite, but it was somewhat dynamic in nature, but there was a lot of analytical work. It was more just, I would say it was more draining to me because I wasn't fully aligned with it. It just didn't resonate with me, and it was taking more energy out of me than providing energy. And I think if you're doing something you truly love, you're going to get energized from it.
Yep. So, and was part of it because just like the overall corporate mission was just not something that really like got you juiced?
That would be, that was definitely part of it. It was definitely that, but it just didn't excite me. It didn't. I think that the people I worked with were good, and a lot of companies you can find good people that you work with, but there's, sometimes there's politics involved. Sometimes there's just, you don't see what you're doing day to day and how that actually matters necessarily. There was just various things that just didn't seem to resonate with what I wanted to be doing how I wanted to be spending my time, and kind of that, you're going to be in the corporate world, you want to climb the right ladder. And I just feel like I was climbing the right ladder. Whenever I kept looking up, I never wanted my manager's job, which is kind of
that's a great litmus test. So for everybody listening, like, think about that question. Do you want your manager's job? If not, you may be climbing the wrong ladder.
Yeah, because I mean, you put in 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden you're ready for promotion if you do a decent job. Which, if you're not liking what you're doing, it's hard to do a good job. But let's say you did. Okay, great. Then what? You get more responsibilities of something you don't want to do? That sounds terrible.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a great way of thinking about it.
It's depressing, and when you start thinking about that, so it's like you might want to get off that ladder sooner than later, because you're going to get off it eventually, or you're just going to hate your life.
Yeah. So awesome. So okay, so then you saw the ad, we connected, we started working together, right? And I remember that the first thing was you said, "Hey, listen, I'm planning to quit my job like kind of soon," right? And I was like, "Okay, let's get you an income up and going in, with freelance work, because we can do that quickly. And then, we can, keep going on the purpose. We can keep going on the stuff and build something down the road. But let's get you something where you're making more for less time flexibly." And so you started diving into the freelancing, and you hit what I call the freelancing valley of death, which everybody hits.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So there's definitely, I'd never freelanced before, or didn't really know much about it. And there's definitely, I had to write a lot of proposals, which, you helped with, and getting a response, or even just people interested. It was difficult getting a response, and I didn't know if that was me. I didn't know. I mean, part of it's just like, if you haven't done it before and they don't see that you've done it, then it's harder to get your foot in the door. So it's really that, I guess by definition, that valley of death is getting that first job. And so how do you do that without having a job before? It's like the chicken or the egg. And so I eventually broke through because someone was willing to take a risk, and they're like, we like your background. I think we spoke on the phone, and the conversation went well. And so it took some time, though. You might recall better than I how long it took, but it felt like a very long time.
It was actually shorter than it felt. From the time you sent out your first proposal to the time you got your first job was like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. And so it seems like a really long time, because, and this is something I see a lot with freelancers, is that there's a crisis of confidence. They're like, can this really work? Right. I'm not getting a steady paycheck. Like, is this going to happen? And it's something that especially if people haven't been trained to believe in themselves, right, can be really difficult. And also, as you said, it's new. And unfortunately, the nature of the beast in freelancing is that it's the hardest job is your first job. Once you get your first job, things get easier, right? So it can take, 10 or 20 proposals, even if you're doing it right, to get your first job. And then once you have your first job, it takes, it may take 5 or 10 to get the next job. And then like gradually it gets easier, and then people are messaging you and you don't have to worry about proposals. And it's kind of like this exponential curve. But a lot of people, they get caught in that freelancing valley of death, and they just never get their first job. More than 50% of the people on most big freelancing platforms, they never make $1.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, when you start getting more hits, then you can also raise your rate too.
Yeah, exactly. So once it gets to the point where you're not sending out proposals and people are messaging you, and you're like, well, I don't want to work 80 hours a week, which is what it would take to do all of these jobs. I want to work less. And I've certainly been in this position. It's like, okay, fine. I'm just going to, raise my rate. Instead of charging, X, I'm going to charge 1.5X, and then that will cull down the time. Right. And so it's a process where it really builds over time. I think for the job that you got was what, $90 an hour?
You said 90?
Yeah, I think it was 90, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So just to put that in perspective for people, $90 an hour is equivalent to $180,000 a year. Right. So you can always take your hourly freelancing rate. Once you've got it ramped up, multiply by 2,000, that's your annual income. Right.
And this job happened to be like a longer term job as well. I mean, I was put on a kind of like a trial phase, and I went to the head of the story, but I could have gone that route, but I ended up going a different direction. But it had the potential to be more full-time, let's call it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Now, here's the thing, though, and that is the freelancing for you was always a dream bridge, right? It was to tide you over, because at the end of the day, there were aspects of it that didn't really resonate with you at the deepest degree, right? And this is something where, like, I'll see people where they'll say, "Oh, well, this is the dream bridge isn't perfect. It's better than where I am, but it's not perfect. So, like, I don't want to do it." What?
Hence the bridge.
Hence the bridge, right? Yeah. Exactly. And I think one of the things that I've seen with you is that you're always willing to take the next step, right? Even if it's not perfect, you're like, okay, if it's better than A, I'm going to take it. And if you just keep taking those steps, right? And you made a lot of steps during the, I mean, in the 100 days we worked together, you went from leaving your job, you were going freelance, and then the next step, you were working at, you actually got a new job at some startup in the Bay Area. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that was actually pretty unexpected. I was traveling abroad. Company reached out. Was interested in because I'd applied. I had been applying to various jobs, and from the point they reached out to through the whole interview process, I actually came in and went in person once I got back. It took like 8 days before I got an offer, which was the fastest turnaround time that I've ever gone through. It's really fast.
Yeah.
And
normally it's like 3 weeks is like the average turnaround time for getting an offer.
Yeah, and I've had as long as 3 months. So so that was, I'm speaking in past tense because of what came to be after, but that was a great job. Definitely, had I not left the corporate world, I would still be there. And that was, it really was, it got me, it got me to that next big step. It wasn't like, this is part of the bridge. This was kind of the end sight. But I actually even surpassed that now. Thankfully, I'm kind of still in that next phase, but that job I was working with, some really cool companies. The people were awesome, and it was really exciting. I felt like the mission was aligned with what I wanted, to make the world a better place. I felt like what I was doing were more tangible results from my actions. It was
what exactly, just for the audience, what exactly were you doing? What was the company, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the company basically, they run resale programs for brands. And so it's more about sustainability and helping products get sold that would otherwise just kind of go to the landfill or maybe Goodwill, but I don't know, just basically wouldn't be utilized. And so it's helping the businesses, these brands, because they're making a profit on selling items, basically buying their items back, as opposed to having a third-party seller buy them and then sell them however they want to sell them. The brands have the power to actually determine how they want to price it, et cetera. And this company, the company I was working for, runs that platform for them. So it was really exciting, and they're definitely growing a lot. I ended up having to leave after about a couple months because I ended up moving on to the next phase of the journey. So
tell us about that.
So I had decided, oddly enough, the same day that I accepted the offer for the startup, I also signed a franchise agreement. And I signed basically the franchise it's a yoga franchise. I bought 3 locations in the Bay Area. And currently I'm signing a lease in the next week on my first location. I've been interviewing for candidates for a general manager, and I'm really excited about moving forward with, opening up these franchises, because they really aligns with kind of my passion for helping people better themselves in more of a physical way, which also translates over to more spiritual, depending on how people want to utilize it. But I feel like I'm making a much greater impact in the way I want to, that I feel like truly aligns with who I am. And so I chose a franchise because I haven't run a business on my own before, and I wanted some of that support. So that's the route I decided to go. But
which, by the way, matches up with some things on your disc and your motivators that we were talking about, right? Much better than if you tried to just go start your own business from scratch in your case.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but so there's an internal and external journey that you bring clients through, and although that the external journey is what we're talking about, and that's like the tangible, hey, look what Sean did for people. For me, the internal journey actually, I find more value in that. So, and it's hard to really convey hey, look at my internal, like I can't show you before and after, and I can't explain that to you, but that's what I found the most valuable through this process, because what happened, and this goes back to people's beliefs, but what I changed inside is showing on the outside.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that they're linked. And with you, it was crazy synchronicity, because with it, when we got to the final capstone discussions about purpose, and we did the values discovery, and we did all of this, you signed that agreement with the franchise thing. And then we checked it against, all the whole systems, everything. And it all happened within a period of like less than a week or something. Right. And the timeline, it could not have been coincidence. It's like the thing with Carl Jung, and like he's talking about the Egyptian beetle, and then he's in New York, and then suddenly the beetle's on the windowsill. He's like, how did that get there? Like the synchronicity was, and a lot of people will kind of like write that off. But sure. I've just seen too many coincidences and too many synchronicities for it to be chance.
Well, and like I said, I signed my offer letter for the startup and the franchise on the same day as well. Like there were just a lot of synchronicities, and I think synchronicity, it's a sign, and yep. I'm not going to say, I don't know from where, but it's a path, and it's like, okay, you're on the path.
Yep. By the way, just there's a comment. Angela's thank you for doing these interviews. So thank you, Adam, as well for jumping on and sharing your story. People are watching and are inspired. So, and I know that matters to you, because one of the things that we got to when we did do the value discovery is we got to how much you care about spirituality, and about knowing yourself, and also about sharing that with other people.
Yeah, it's what goes around comes around. I mean, goes back, everyone has a different belief system, but I just felt like the internal journey, it really, things started clicking. It's a great program, and going in, I was thinking it was just a purely external journey. It was going to help me get to my, career-wise, my next step, which, that's what I wanted. But I got the added bonus of having the internal journey as well, and that was something that I'd been seeking on my own for a long time. So it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, so there's always there's a saying in marketing. They say, "Sell people what they want, give them what they need." Mm-hmm. So I like to do both. I like to, sell them what they want, give them what they want, because I promised it. So I'm sure it's all going to deliver, but then also give them what they really need. And the external journey is what most people come for. The internal journey often ends up being more valuable.
Well, and it's hard to market the internal journey, right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to actually only market the internal journey. Used to only market that. Didn't get me very far. But by marketing the external journey, delivering the external journey, and delivering the internal journey, I've had the ability to impact people, a lot more people, and have a lot larger shifts. Because very often people, especially with like the internal stuff, that process was like long, and there are parts where you're like, where is this going? Because, from the beginning, the system is not quite as apparent as it is at the end, And so it helps to also deliver external wins and build that confidence, and that, so that people actually do the work and then see the result.
Well, I love how doing the internal journey work, you break down societal conditioning on what you think you should be doing, which keeps, that keeps leading people astray.
Yeah.
And then you find out what you truly want without other people saying what you should want.
Yep.
And then it's clear.
Yep. And that's the thing. That's where so many people, when it comes to like, clarity and purpose and all this kind of stuff, if you don't clean out all of that garbage, you're never going to get there. Right. The term I like to use is it's like static in the radio. you're trying to listen to what your heart's trying to tell you, and there's static in the radio. You got to get rid of the static. It's the only way.
Yeah. Like, why am I holding on to all these beliefs that I was told to believe? I don't want that. That's not me.
Yep.
Why is it there? Yeah.
Yep. And so even beyond, your career, because now, you've got this business that you're running, you're doing what you want to do. You feel like you're making impact. And there's a lot of other stuff in your life that's, was great coming in. But how has this transformation spilled over into all the other aspects of your life, now that you've gone through it?
Yeah. Some of it's hard to necessarily pick out because everything kind of bleeds together.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say my outlook is different. Not that I was ever I always had hope, but that things would get better. But that's kind of just me. But having, there's like a meditation daily ritual that you had us go through that I still do.
Yep. And you should every single day. Every person, if you are, by the way, if you're a client and you're watching this and you've graduated and you're not doing your ritual every day, go back and do it every day.
I think if everyone in the world meditated every day, we'd be in a very different place.
Yeah.
So that being said, meditating every day and the way you have us do it, that really just kind of sets the intention and reminds me of what I want, what I'm focused on, and it kind of changes my vibrational, just my vibration and frequency to allow that to happen. And so, I would say I'm happier. Part of that's I'm not in that last, the first job, but there's definitely been, I've seen it's kind of been in steps. And as I cleared out some of that previous baggage, whether it was complaining or there was various exercises you had us do. Some of those resonated with me more than others because there were a larger issue in my life than others.
Yeah, that's always the case. Different people. Some people are much more oriented towards the complaining and the blame side of things. Some people are a lot more oriented towards the putting themselves down and pleasing others kind of things.
Yeah.
The different stresses, when we go through them, different people suffer from different stresses more. Some people are more anger, some people are more fear, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it's great because it's all encompassing because you don't even know what you don't know, and then, obviously. And you find out oh, I really do have an issue with appeasing others. And you catch yourself doing that enough where, for me, complaining was a big one because at work it's easy at the time to talk to coworkers and just you complain, you feel a little bit better because you're complaining together. But then thinking about deeper into that, what am I trying to get from this? And then you realize nobody really likes to hear anyone complain anyway. So I stopped doing that, and I just started feeling better. I feel like the people around me started interacting with me differently. It just feeds on itself. And so it's hard to really, to answer your original question, it's hard to know how some of this has impacted my life in various ways. And that's why I said my vibration just changed, and it changed everything.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a cop-out answer, but
no, it's I mean, that's fine. I know when you were talking about complaining, a lot of people focus on the action of complaining, and what they don't realize is that the complaining, when I have people go through it, has very little to do with the action. Yes, it helps to see that it's not necessarily the most effective strategy, but really it's about your brain and the thought process behind the complaining. Because when you start to rewire your brain to not think that way, then I remember there was a client who posted something in the private Facebook group about this, about how complaining rewires your brain and not complaining rewires your brain and fundamentally shifts your perspective. Because at the end of the day, a lot of it comes back to that, to how you
instead of thinking about what you don't like, you start thinking about what you do like.
Yeah.
And then it just, so trying to answer your question better, maybe.
Don't feel obligated to provide a good answer or whatever. We're having a conversation.
My interactions have been more positive. I feel happier. I feel like doors have opened that I wouldn't have seen before, because instead of just kind of feeling down or a little frustrated, I feel happy, and I'm looking at what's to come in kind of opportunities that I can pursue that are arising that I don't think would have otherwise.
Yep. Yep. And I know one thing you mentioned to me, and this may, there may be a lot you want to say about this, but I know, reading between the lines, right, there were interactions between you and your wife. And I know you've mentioned that you would love for your wife to actually come go through this process as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I've mentioned it to a couple friends, my sister. I think it's good for everyone. And I think everyone's different. And so everyone would get something different from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, all relationships have their various dynamics and ups and downs. And I think going through the process that we each went through in this program on the internal journey, it would help everyone see maybe where their blind spots are and to really have to do work on those areas. And so I think for anyone anywhere, but in my life that I interact with, it would just be helpful to have them go through it, because I think they could get a lot from it. And so, yeah, I think, obviously I spend a lot of time with my wife, so she was one that came to mind. She's a wonderful person, but I still think that, there's stuff that she could gain from the program as well. So,
I mean, I think you say everybody who hasn't done it should do it,
Yeah.
Like it's just like leveling up as a human being. And then that's the thing I think one of the reasons why you were able to make so many shifts so quickly and get so much out of the external journey is because of how much effort and care you put into the internal journey. Right. I think and that's the thing, is that they're inextricably linked. And so every time I see a coach out there who's like selling either just an internal thing, which normally when I see just internal stuff, it's like not systematized. Right. And then, people struggle because they want the external, or then people will sell just the external, but they won't give them the internal fuel to power that. Right. And I think it's something where you really need both of them to make it, to like cross and interweave, as it were.
Yeah. I think to make it sustainable, without doing the internal work, the external is kind of hollow. It doesn't seem like it'll last. Maybe it will, but it seems like it's a much more on solid footing,
mm-hmm.
having done the internal journey and now being where I am externally. And I still have a long way to go, but I feel confident about the path I'm on,
mm-hmm.
and know that it will continue because I've done that internal work.
Yep. And you and I will very likely at some point in the future continue, because, I do. And for anybody watching, this is only for people who have already gone through the program and been great clients and knocked out of the ballpark, and, especially on the internal side. But I do a follow-on, year-long program where we dive even deeper and we go, a lot of the awaken stuff is breaking negative patterns. And then the ascendant stuff, which is the higher level thing, is for taking the next steps and not just being able to be neutral and content, but to really, really get the deep richness of life and, going into manifestation and going into, all the highest states that people can be in and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. And I know that, Adam being a very spiritual guy, something that we've talked about. So looking forward to when we can continue down that journey as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny. I didn't even realize that was a part when I started working with you again, like this internal work, and I'll call it more manifestation and whatnot. I had no idea that was even a part of this. So that was just such a pleasant surprise, because a lot of that is something I was seeking, and it's kind of like, it was meant to be. So
yeah. Absolutely love it. Cool, man. Well, we're getting near the end here. Are there any last messages, last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if you're in a similar place that I was, well, it's good for anyone. So I would recommend it for everyone. But that being said, if you are in a place where you want to make a change but you don't know how, I definitely recommend this program, because Sean, you were very helpful in having individual calls and really helping guide, and I know other people as well, just by the various other shared calls that we've had as a group. You cater it to everyone individually such that they're able to help. You're helping them find their, whatever their goal is, whether it's a dream bridge, freelancing, entrepreneurship, and the real issue is just getting started. So once you make that decision to work with Sean or you, you guide them and you bring them to wherever their goals are. And quite frankly, a lot of people probably don't even know what they want next. And so you help them find that.
Yep.
So I would definitely recommend you. Again, I've recommended you to many people I love and I care about. So, yeah. And so, anyone that is listening or does listen, definitely think that it's worth just at the very least an introduction, your introductory call. See if it's a good fit. You have nothing to.
Yeah, and if you guys want to book that call here, you can go to this link, www.oculusinstitute.com/scheduling. Just the way we do the introductory call, we get clear on where you are, we get clear on where you want to go. If it's a good fit, like it was, with me and Adam, then we talk about what that looks like. If it's not a good fit, then I'll steer you to whatever will serve you, because at the end of the day, this is a great deal about service, right? I do want to, the outcomes are really, really important to me. And sometimes the best way to get that outcome may be doing something else, in which case I'll tell you that. But either way, it's definitely the place to go to get started. And I think, Adam, there's something you said earlier that I want to reiterate. That was a great litmus test. And that is, if you're in a job and you're looking for it and you're going, oh, well, I'm not happy. Would I be happy if I had my manager's job? And you go, no. If you're not happy where you are and you're not happy where where your promotion is going to go, you're probably climbing the wrong corporate ladder. And if that's the case, there's no point in getting to the top of the wrong ladder. That's not a win. So get on the right ladder, do something that you really believe in, do something that really allows you to make the impact you want to make, and that aligns with who you are. And this is the place to go and get started. Cool. Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your journey with everybody. We've got people in the comments, thanking you for coming on. So that's awesome, man. And you and I are obviously going to be in touch. And to everybody, hopefully I will speak to you soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Sean.
Cheers.